Joseph, I wanted to ask you quick, is it still snowing there?
There is no more snow.
Okay.
It is, but there is ridiculous rain right now. Like,
Really?
I was driving home from the airport this morning, early this morning, and I had to put hazards on because it was coming in sideways.
No.
Floated all the way down to I was driving like 25 miles per hour in the freeway. What's that, like 40 kilometers?
Just
Like
the most extreme
way.
weather.
I mean, it's Texas. Like
Yeah.
it's snowing one, and then I think this afternoon it's supposed to be like 70 degrees or something like that. So yeah, it's all over.
Goodness.
Like it really is all over.
That's
So
fair. I
funny.
feel like Winnipeg is the same. It was 1+1 degrees one day, and then it's -40 the next. It's a
Yeah, today's
wild,
minus
wild.
12. It's not too bad.
It's
Yeah.
not too bad, she says. It's like, shorts and t-shirt weather.
Yeah. And it's sunny, so it's nice.
Yeah.
So
I love it.
one of the things I wanted to ask you, Joseph, because we kind of talked about it in our last conversation, but you have talked about how you've had the opportunity to kind of move around a lot.
Yeah.
You said you had moved from like Vancouver to like California, and now you're located in Texas, and I'm assuming there might be more moves in there as well. How do you feel like this has like played into adaptability being in your life? How that kind of works with your work and who you are and that kind of thing?
Yeah, there's two different levels of how moves affect humanity and human beings, right? Like a lot of it just has to do with what stage you are in life when the move occurs, right? So for example, when I was 7 years old, my family moved to Taiwan for a year. So we lived in Taiwan for a year. But at 7 years old, right? Like nothing feels different. Like you just assume that things are the way they are. So when you see like live chickens at the market, at the night market, you're just like, oh, there's live chickens. That's really cool. That's an animal in a cage. And then when they like cut the head off and it's just like, I guess that's just the way it's done, right? Like you don't question very much because that's just the stage where you are. When I was 16, I moved from Vancouver, Canada, where I was born, to Orange County, California. So same coast, different latitude, different country. So similar vibe because the coast is there, but it was just after the Rodney King instance. So we were like 3 or 4 years post Rodney King in Southern California. And so there was a tension around racial, and you could feel it. Like I remember moving from Vancouver where everyone was friendly. Everyone said sorry all the time. That's what Canadians are known for, right? Like we say sorry all the time. And everyone's just nice. And then I moved to California, and I had always heard that California was super laid back. And then I went out on the street and like I'd walk past somebody and they'd put their head down rather than say hi. Like I had grown up just like you walk past someone on the street and you're like, hey, how you doing? So it was an adjustment. But then I lived in California from the time that I was 16 till the time that I was almost 40. All right. So now that developmental time, that time where you finish high school and now I go to college and university. So now all of those really adult formative years are spent in a different culture, right? And then in 2015, our family moves from California to Lubbock, Texas, which is 4 hours from any other major city. I mean, like middle of nowhere, but it's a big city. It's just in the middle of nowhere. But it's also the kind of place where, because they're isolated, they've done things a certain way forever. Change comes slower when you're not as close to big pockets of people. And I had to learn really quickly what it was like to really be the outsider. Like I joke with people all the time, but you've never experienced judgment like the eyes of somebody from West Texas when you're the outsider and you have no idea that you're the outsider. They look at you and they go, bless you. And they smile at you. But in their head, they're thinking, son, we don't do things like that around here. Like take that California idea and take that back to where you came from, right?
In that exact accent.
But it's all done with their eyes and with their, like the smile, the polite smile. So now I had to learn in the space of empathy, right? Thinking about what it is to relate to somebody else. Like the initial thought about empathy is, how do I put myself in somebody else's shoes? Now I'm trying to figure out what those shoes even look like what size are the shoes that I'm trying to fit, right? Now I have to learn different social norms and what are body cues and what does a smile look like and what does an eyebrow raise look like and all those nonverbal pieces that fit you in. And one of the best pieces of advice that I got when I first moved to Lubbock, which was the first time that I felt like an outsider, was from a mentor. And she said, Joseph, if you're going to change the system, because I had come in with some California ideas to the new school, right? And my principal just didn't take kindly to them, just because it wasn't the way that their journey was. And my ideas just didn't quite fit in. They just weren't successful there. And my mentor said to me, Joseph, if you're going to change the system, you have to remember not everybody sees you the way that I do. You have to learn the system from the inside out and then change the system from the inside out.
So interesting. So how do you feel like that has kind of like guided your path forward as the empathy guy?
My goodness. You always realize, like you've heard this, you've heard the quote. I don't know who it's attributed to, but everybody is fighting a battle that nobody knows about.
Yeah.
And when you can take that as the foundation of a skill, okay? Because what you're realizing when you put yourself in enough of a present state to recognize this person's behavior is not necessarily because they want to be a jerk. This person's behavior is because there's something that's going on below the surface that I have no idea about. That takes you out of the judgment and brings about compassion. And when non-judgment and compassion become the foundation of a relationship at any stage, now you have the capacity to create the space where empathy can exist.
Yeah, I really love that. I feel like that's something that I'm trying to do so much. And even like my daily life, I'm always trying to play like empathy devil's advocate with everyone around me. So someone will come home and they'll be like, this guy cut me off in traffic and then he honked at me and blah, blah, blah. And I mean, I'm like, oh, how dare he? And then I'm also like, wait a second. What if this guy was running really late for an appointment and he just was in a rush and he wasn't thinking about it? Or what if, who knows, like maybe he just was very stressed out driving and he by accident did that. Like you don't know what is happening in that person's brain really.
Yeah.
Even for something as simple as that, or something as large as like preconceived thoughts and ideas against people.
Actually, that makes me think about something I think you had said before, Joseph. I think you've written it somewhere. Kind of empathy isn't just for like the people you like, but it's also for the people who like frustrate you sometimes. And that like really hit home for me. Do you want to like share some times that you had to practice that in like kind of your life?
Oh my goodness. So before I answer the question, Ramesh, I have to make sure that we clarify. And I'm going to ask you the question, and then I'll tell you something. Okay, Courtney and Ramesh, what is the difference between sympathy and empathy? Okay, Ramesh, you asked the question. So Ramesh, you take the floor. What do you think it is?
Wow. That's such a good question I haven't thought about. I feel like when you hear the word sympathy, you're like, oh, let's feel sorry for this person. But you don't really have to take any action about it. Whereas empathy is more like, okay, how do I make myself be like, well, or like, how do I show that I am actively kind of understanding your side of things?
Ooh, that's good. That's good. Courtney, what would you say? What's the difference between sympathy and empathy?
Your answer, Ramesh, I was thinking like along the same lines where sympathy almost feels like very surface level and empathy feels a lot deeper, like feeling it deeper within yourself when you're empathizing with someone compared to like sympathizing with someone is very almost like colleagues. Like it doesn't go very deep. And yeah, sympathy, I feel like sometimes can have a negative connotation to it sometimes as well, where you're sympathizing with someone, you're kind of feeling sorry for them or you feel bad for them, or maybe it's in like a negative kind of outlook. And empathy feels a little bit more respectful to feel towards someone.
Both fantastic answers. And you're both like right here, just
Yay.
below. Just
like
below.
A B+ answer.
Yes, you're right there. Like I would have given you a passing grade, but I want to not just define it with what's right and wrong. I want to give you a different lens by which you can look at sympathy and empathy, which is what's the source of both. Okay. Sympathy is driven by emotions, feeds on emotions, and stays with emotions, right? I feel bad for someone, so I want to do something for them to make them feel better, right? And what does that usually look like from the lens of sympathy? Here, let me help you fix your problems. Or, oh, I feel so sorry for you. That's terrible. and we encourage that thought of it's up at this level. Empathy is a skill that is driven by the heart that has boundaries. Think about this, okay? If Rometh came to me and said, I can't believe someone just cut me off in traffic. Empathy is, oh man, that sucks, dude. Let's go out and get, like, what can we do? Like, how can you, and we just get all into the emotions, okay? Empathy is Rometh walks in and goes, dude, somebody just cut me off. And empathy would be, yeah, that feels terrible to have somebody cut you off. I'm wondering what else it is, though, that's got you as frustrated as it is. What else is taking place? You see, sympathy, and here's the thing is, when we talk sympathy drives emotions, feeds on emotions, and grows emotional. But it tends to grow more emotional dysregulation or more emotional shutdown, right? We want to solve the problem. Empathy comes at a place of skill where empathy is all about creating the space. Sympathy is about solving the problem or exploiting the victim.
That's such a cool perspective to think about it like that. And there's definitely been moments for me where I'm like, I feel really sorry for you, but I haven't gone, and I'm more reactive and be like, hey, how do I help you? But without being like, what's actually making you feel this way? So that's such a really good point.
Meth, I'm so glad that you said the word reactive. Okay, so think about this, okay? If you were to call 911 because it was an emergency, do they call first reactors or first responders? They call first responders because first reactors would react from a place of emotion. And that would be their personal sympathy for your pain. And they would either go big emotion or they would shut down or they would think about, and that does nothing for the person who's in pain. An emotional first responder comes in with empathy as a skill that they have practiced so much that they can come in and they know exactly what to do. They're not reacting, they're responding.
I love that example because it makes it so present in your mind to think about every person who has to be a responder in your life. If you think about like a great teacher from your life or a mentor or someone who you lean on for help, like a first responder or something, the successful ones who do the best, I feel like, are the ones who are empathizing and holding that space for you rather than the ones who are kind of sympathizing and being a little more surface leveled. They're ones who are kind of like, oh, like, that sucks, you're failing your class, and let's help you with your homework. Not like well, why do you think this is? Or like, how can we dive deeper into this?
Yeah. Two things that I'm going to add on to that is one, which is when you create the space for someone to feel, their capacity to receive your help grows exponentially. Think about that. Because the mirroring neurons that are in our brain respond to the more powerfully intentional emotion, the more powerfully intentional feeling. And so if you can become the mirror by demonstrating empathy as a skill in a highly emotional moment, those emotions that are out of control with that other person now are wired biologically to mirror your emotions, which are under control, because you're not worried about emotions. You're worried about creating space. And by creating space, you have come into a place of being grounded enough to firstly create space for yourself by being grounded, which in turn creates space for them to choose change, fractional shifting of their outlook just a little bit.
Wow, I really like that. I'm curious what you think. So you're talking about how empathy is a skill that you learn and you develop over time, and like that's where it's at. Is this a skill that you feel like people are learning on their own? Do you feel like it's something that people need to learn? Like there's not enough of it? Do you feel like it is something that should begin younger, older, whatever age?
Well,
sorry, I feel like that was two questions in one.
No, but it's all layered together, right? Every human beings are wired to connect. Our survival as a species, as a like as humans, is dependent on our capacity to connect with others, because nobody survives on their own. You just can't, right? And even if you did survive on your own, there's an element of fulfillment that's missing because you're not connected to other human beings. So every human being is born with the seed of empathy within you. Now, here's where it gets a little bit different. If there's a difference between, and this is something that I'm playing with, so I want to see if this resonates with you. But there's a difference between being empathic and using empathy as a skill.
Okay.
People like the three of us grew up in homes and in cultures where we developed an empathic nature to help us survive in the world, right? We learned how to get along with people because it was the survival mechanism that we needed to survive. So we learned when when dad was really frustrated, I realized I'm going to take on his emotion. I'm going to feel his emotion for myself, and I'm not going to get him upset. That's empathic, right? I learned. So empathic nature, by nature, it's a survival skill, right? But it also, as you get older, and that empathic nature in you doesn't learn the boundaries of what it is to be an authentically real person. Now that empathic nature turns into people pleasing, it turns into being the good guy or the good girl. It turns into sometimes perfectionism because we have to make sure that it's for somebody else. It turns into being the problem solver. It turns into being the person who's willing to work for nothing at all because it's all about the good cause, because it's everybody else before me. That's your empathic nature. What's the difference between that? Now you tell, because the three of us know that has also been our superpower in life, hasn't it? Like, people have looked at us and they've said, gosh, like, your heart for humanity is huge. And there's a piece of you that kind of goes, yeah, I know it is. But then there's this little voice inside you that says, if you only knew the weight that I carried and the voice that I can't express for myself. I'm so busy taking care of others that I don't know how to take care of myself. So now we're going to introduce empathy as a skill. Empathy as a skill harnesses that empathic nature, puts it into a framework that you can go back to and assess and be reflective with yourself, because empathy for others starts with empathy for yourself. Your capacity to create space for others starts with and is limited by your capacity to create space for yourself.
It's like so beautifully. I was thinking, because, sometimes you grow up masking so much of your personality that masking becomes your personality almost. And it's so difficult later on in life when you're having these conversations to get out of that. And I really resonated with you when you said you need to have empathy for yourself in that process in order to start having more authentic empathy for others, and not really mask for you.
And let's put this in terms of what you said. I love that you said you have to have empathy for yourself. And it's this. I'm going to show compassion for myself and recognize my heart for humanity is really big. Like, I want to solve some really big world problems when it comes to human connection. But if I do that only from my heart, I'm going to experience burnout really quick. You've heard the term compassion fatigue. It's because your heart can only give so much. And your empathic nature is taking the lead rather than employing empathy as the skill that can take the lead. When you employ empathy as a skill, it protects your empathic heart. If all we had was our empathic heart to solve problems, when our problem-solving skill from an empathic place didn't work, and people looked at you and said, well, that's a stupid idea. Why are they hurting? How can they not see it my way? Like, don't they see my heart for humanity? And you can see where those emotions started kicking in, right? And your feelings get hurt. And now you're carrying the weight. And now what you did was you just took on their emotions as your own. And guess what? You're feeling pity for yourself. You know what pity is? Sympathy. There it is.
Whoa.
We can't do self-sympathy. That's pity. That's a victim mentality. Self-empathy is, their idea was different. I wonder what the resistance in me is to that idea. I wonder if it's something within me that I'm missing. Could I go back to them and ask, I heard it this way. Am I missing anything? because I want to hear your side, because I know there's value. I just might not see it yet. By creating space for yourself, now you just reduce the tension in two separate ideas, and we've given space for the wisdom between right and wrong to emerge.
Um, yeah, I was just thinking, actually, you've actually worked with a lot of teenagers, like as a teacher, and I feel like they're one of those misunderstood groups out there. And like now you're like going on coaching these leaders and teams on what like empathy really looks like. Was there kind of like one of those moments in those like teaching days where you were like, this is really shaping my understanding of empathy, and like what kind of stuck for you?
Okay, I'm going to tell a story. It's going to use some real world language. I hope that's okay.
Love that.
Fine. We love it.
One of the stories that I like to tell to the right audiences who can receive it is the one school. There was the school that I taught at when I was in West Texas was the one middle school on the other side of town. And I say that with intention because I need you to know, like, there was only one middle school on the other side of town and everything that comes with. And so it was about October of that year, and I got a knock on the door, and the registrar, who is the person who registers all the new kids, says, "Hey, this is Ebby. She's going to be a new kid in your class." Ebby's not her real name. This is for protective purposes. But Ebby shows up, and she's got blue hair. You know, you can already tell she's kind of like on edge. So she's definitely an outsider. She's the kind of kid who sits either at the very back of the class or at the front of the class. Because either she's got to have everybody in front of her and she's got to have eyes on everyone, or she's got to be the center of attention right in front of the teacher and taking all the oxygen in the room. Well, I found out pretty quickly. The counselor came to me at the end of the day and said, "Hey, this is her second foster placement this year, just so that you know." And they let me know some of the things. Well, if this is your second foster placement of the year, already your heightened senses are up. And the hardest part of the day for Ebby every single day was lunchtime. Think about a middle school lunchroom for somebody who lives life emotionally dysregulated. So Ebby would oftenly be sitting with her back to the wall because she had to see everybody around her. And if there was even an inkling of somebody looking at her, giving her a side look, it wasn't uncommon for Ebby to stand up and say something like, "What's up, bitch? You want some of this? Like, come on, let's." And they're standing and they're jawing back and forth. And now you don't have people like breaking up the fight. Now you've got kids busting out their phones and they're just egging it on. Well, guess when I got to teach Ebby every single day after school, or I got to teach Ebby every single day right after lunch. And so Ebby's the kind of kid who you don't just hear coming down the hallway, you feel Ebby coming down the hallway. Like you just feel the energy of Ebby walk down. So I had to get really creative as a teacher in how I could, one, help to regulate her, how to become the mirror, how to create that space for her. So one day I knew, and here's the thing, Ebby was also an incredible writer. Like she could express in words beautifully. So the evening before a big writing piece, I created a lesson plan with Ebby in mind. So like the content was Ebby centered. Like I knew it was something that would resonate with her. That day, she's walking down the hallway and it's coming in, and I can feel it as she walks in. And she walks into the room and she goes, "Mr. Cope, I ain't doing fucking shit today for you. I don't care what you tell me. Those bitches in there, they got on my case and somebody's going to get their ass whooped today." And I'm thinking to myself, but the lesson plan is all about you. Like I did all this intention. Like that's why I had like,
Yeah.
like you don't know what I did for you. Okay. Then my brain kicks in and goes, okay, something else is going on. So this is how the conversation went. I said, "I think you're clearly not yourself. And I'm wondering if there's something that we can do to give you a chance to get back to yourself. The lesson plan I created today, I had you in mind. And you can be successful. It's just going to take something on you to get there. What's it going to take for you to get there?" Did you notice my voice level went down?
Immediately.
Right? Like the words were all about her, right? I wanted her to get the gain in the conversation. It wasn't about what the words that she said to me. I couldn't be offended by the language. I had to recognize what else is it going on. So I said, "Is there something that we can do that you can get back to being the best you?" She looks at me, she goes, "Why the fuck are you whispering to me?" And I said, "It's already been spilled. And if we make it bigger, then she's asking questions. So let me ask you one more time. What is it that you need to get back to the best version of you?" And she looks at me, she goes, and so I said, "Take your 3 minutes. And when you come back in, we don't even need to notice you coming in. and get right. Okay, I want you to notice something about what happened with Eddie, right? One, she was curious about the behavior change from me because it wasn't what she was used to. Like it threw her off. I flipped the script and it threw her off enough to get curious. Curious. So even in her, what the F are you whispering to me for? Why the F are you whispering to me? That's curiosity, okay? Not disrespect. The second thing is, did you notice when she said 3 minutes, she didn't yell 3 minutes, she power whispered. So those mirroring neurons kick in where rather than if in a typical situation, somebody who wasn't aware in that moment, right? Like if I had not been trained in this, the first year teacher, Joseph, the kid would have come in and I would have said, man, get yourself out of here. Go get yourself under control. You can't use that kind of language in here. That's disrespectful. And what would have she done? She would have come up here. And then we've got power struggle.
Yeah.
But because I had the training, right? And now the awareness, she came in at this level right away. I recognized, and I came all the way down here. And then her mirroring neurons kicked in, and here she comes down here. And by the time she comes into class, we're doing the things that we got to do.
It just leads me to think I have so much conversations with my friends and my family and stuff about like someone, if you are raised or if someone around you knows how to regulate properly, then you figure out how to do that. Because you mirror exactly what you're saying, Joseph, where you mirror what that other person is doing and you meet the energy of the people around you. So if you're being raised with a parent or a caretaker, or even when you're around a friend who is just batshit, for lack of a better word, you're going to meet that energy and that level because that's where it's meeting. I love the hand description. I'm a visual person, so I love that. And so it's so important to have those people around you, and especially someone like a teacher or a mentor or whoever, to be able to kind of pull that energy down if you need it. I mean, sometimes some people just have a really high moment and then they need to be pulled down. Sometimes some people live in the state, the like panic, loud, angry state, and then they need to be pulled down more frequently as compared to every once in a while. I'm just like, I'm losing it. And my partner's like, okay, like, it's okay. We're going to take a deep breath.
I mean, here's the thing is, yes, think about what, remember we were talking about first reactor versus first responder, right? In the story that I just shared with you, I had learned the skills to be a first responder, right? So in that moment, even though it was high, I leaned in because I had the skill to do it. There's actually a second part to that story, because when you demonstrate skill and that skill resonates with somebody else, those mirroring neurons are not only limited to emotion, because when you see yourself in somebody else, what do you want to do? Be like that person. So part 2 of the story happened 2 weeks later. When she came down the hallway, it was high energy again, but I want you to notice the difference in how she came in the classroom. This time she came in the classroom and she comes up to me, she goes, did the language change? No. But what changed? Did she come in yelling? She came in power whispering. So now her starting point is lower. So she's leaning into, she doesn't realize that it's a skill yet. All right, but now she's trying to get to a place where she can self-regulate, and she's leaning on me to say, can I get that 3 minutes again? But this is me. But that, remember, and I want to make sure that I told Rameth before we started, which is my purpose is to redefine empathy so that it's accessible as a skill in the human ecosystem. And the way that I'm redefining empathy is the space that leaders create for another individual so that that individual can see the value of change for themselves. It's not about being nice. It's not about being fluffy, right? Because within that definition, you can see how accountability is built in, but it starts with accountability towards myself. I have to be the one to hold boundaried space without getting sucked into the emotions so that change can take place. But it's not change because I told you so. It's change because you want to for yourself.
Wow, that's so powerful. I love that definition. What a well-rounded way to explain it, because it just says so much. I wanted to kind of circle back to something that you said, because you were talking, well, what you were talking about is that empathy begins within you, or a
Mhm.
leader giving you that space to build it within yourself. So as a leader who is teaching this empathy skill, how do you hold space for yourself? And how do you kind of practice that self-care, boundary setting, when sometimes you're dealing with maybe these high emotions or just teaching the skill?
I'm going to answer the question in a roundabout way, and then I'll tell you what I do specifically.
Totally.
What if I was to tell you that 95% of the decisions, the choices that you make in your life come from somewhere in the subconscious? Okay, I'm going to
Makes
prove it
sense.
to you right now. I'm going to prove it to you. I'll do what I do with my audiences in my workshops right now. Both of you hold up your right thumb. How many decisions has that right thumb made for you today without you even thinking about them as choices? Every single time you both picked up your cups, your thumb is making a choice without you even thinking about it. Right? Similarly, our emotions and the choices that we make based on our reactions come from somewhere in that subconscious, which means that only 5% of the decisions that we make are somewhere in our conscious space. So, the old iceberg thing, right? So if I'm going to change how something within the subconscious, I have to learn the language of the subconscious. So before we talk about the language of the subconscious, the language of the conscious is words, logic, and reason. That's the what. That's why we have books and we get so informed about what goes on. The problem solver in us stays in the conscious level, right? The language of the subconscious, what's underneath the surface, is, get this, emotions, of course, but imagery. Imagery is the language of the subconscious. Anything that elicits imagery within us brings something up from our subconscious that we didn't know was there. This is why when you're driving home after a long day at work and you got into an argument with your boss, but you've got to get back to your wife and your wife is not doing well with you either. So you're having all this inner turmoil and this song comes on the radio and you start bawling. Like, what? Why am I bawling at this stupid song? That song elicited images of this, and it's not even about the present moment. That visualization is stirring up things from your past, the memories that have formed your subconscious. So when it comes to self-care, okay, I could, have a glass of wine and take a bubble bath, right? I can do like the outward things. And I'm going to say there's value to all those things, right? To me, there's different levels of self-care. To me, there's the physical self-care, right? For me, I know when I run, I know that the truth out there is when you sweat, like when you get to the sweat point, you are actually sweating out cortisol. The hormone cortisol sweats out. So if I'm going to go out for a run, I'm going to do it until I at least get to the sweat point. Like if somebody's pissing me off, I know I got to go for a run and I got to get to at least the point that I'm sweating and I know I'm going to feel better. But what about the things that keep coming back to me? Like, what about the thing that keeps making me frustrated? Courtney, to answer your question, one of the first questions that I ask myself is, how old do I feel right now? And I have to sit in that question. And then I ask myself, so if I feel like 14 or 15, then I ask myself, what about being 14 or 15 reminds me of this very moment? What's the wound from me being 15, 14 that's emerging right now in the way that I'm reacting? And how can I change that? How can I change that by being compassionate to that part of me that I'm creating space for so that the best of me can emerge?
That's so powerful. I love that. I'm stealing that forever for my own life.
And I love that for you, Courtney, because what we have to recognize is the person who we are today is an amalgamation of every single experience that we've had in life. And as much as we want to just say, like, I'm not worried about my past, like my past made me who I am today, and I'm stronger for it. In the state of high emotion, remember, in those states of high emotion, that subconscious comes to the surface when we don't want it to. And now we start acting like that child. But if we don't start asking ourselves, how old am I? And then showing compassion for that age of you, then you'll continue to act like that age when the next situation like that occurs again. You'll just keep coming back to acting like a 5-year-old throwing tantrums. You'll keep coming back to the 7-year-old who doesn't believe that he's enough because his mom said, That's all you got, sweetie?
Mhm.
Right? You're going to be, in my case, you're going to be the 15-year-old who ran away from home and stayed away from home for 3 weeks, but felt so guilty and shameful for leaving his two younger brothers at home, and the shame and the guilt around that, without realizing, like, when I worked on this process with a coach, I was able to see that 15-year-old version of me that I had been holding so much shame about leaving the house as the oldest of three boys, leaving my two younger brothers, and feeling like what it was like now to all of a sudden be the bad kid, because I grew up the good kid. But now for the first time, I'm the bad kid, and I'm making choices that my parents don't agree with. It took creating the space with a coach. They had to help me create the space for myself to realize, actually, you know what? The 15-year-old stood up for himself for the first time ever. The courage that it took to actually leave and live on your own for 3 weeks at 15, that's badass. And he still went to school every day. And he still went to his job. And he still caught the bus home. And when he chose to come back home, it was with this thought in mind: you have your friends now, but you've got your family forever. My family means a lot to me now, so I'm going to choose to come home. But all of that came out because I had somebody who was able to help create the space for me to see my 15-year-old self in a totally different light.
Yeah.
All of that weight that I've been carrying, now there was a whole shadow side of that I never saw. But now I'm going to tell you, when I feel things of like self-doubt, I look at my 15-year-old and I'm like, dude, why are we feeling this way? But the badass side of my 15-year-old looks at me and goes, you've effing got this. Come on, dude.
Right.
Step in. Be you. Be the you that you were then. And you still maintain social status, and you didn't this, and you reached out for help. And all of those things that 15-year-old did that I didn't give him credit for, now that's part of my identity as the empathy guy. That's part of who I am as Joseph Cope every single day.
Wow. I just like that, because when we, like, even in our work, when we talk about peace building and we talk about how we can reframe trauma in a way that we can control it and give it not let it take control over us, but be able to harness that power from that trauma and reframe it in a way that is productive, and we can have really good conversation. I think empathy just plays such a huge role in that. And I know we need to wrap up, but I just wanted to ask you, what's something kind of practical that anyone can start doing today, something real, something super small, to get started on those, using empathy in their day-to-day lives, or using empathy to have conversations that are difficult or that require building bridges?
I'm going to share my framework with you that I coach, that I speak about. This is the linchpin skill, because I told you, if you can put empathy into a framework, now it becomes a skill that I can reflect on. So the framework that I coach is what I call the cargo model. Okay. Cargo is very different than baggage. Nobody wants baggage in a conversation, but cargo is delivered with intention. So think about that. Intentionality is what we're going for here. So every one of those letters stands for something. The C stands for connection. And all I'm asking for is, what does this person need as a human to feel seen, heard, and valued, so we can reestablish a sense of connection? The A stands for accountability. The accountability has nothing to do with the rules on the outside. Accountability has everything to do with my personal values. Am I holding myself accountable to my values in this moment? The R stands for resistance. And the resistance is, what's the resistance in me that's causing even more resistance in that? What is my responsibility right now to drop the rope, to step in, to lean forward, so that I don't feel as much resistance? The G stands for gain, and the gain has to be towards the recipient. You see, all the work that we've done with connection, accountability to myself, and identifying the resistance within me now gives opportunity for the space to be created for the gain to be about them. Now you're going to really lean into the traditional model of empathy, which is feeling somebody else's, being able to feel somebody else's feelings with them. But what was all the work that we had to do before that to get there. Because if all we did was had the gain to them, that's not empathy. What is that? Sympathy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the gain is to them. And then finally, the O stands for outlook. And the outlook is very different than the outcome. I want to point that out. It's not the outcome because I'm not looking for an end result. I'm just looking for the outlook to shift fractionally.
Right.
If their readiness to change or engage grows, you've created the space of them.
That's so beautiful.
So the cargo model: connect, hold yourself accountable, recognize the resistance within you first, create the space for the gain to be about them, and look for the outlook to shift, even if it's fractional.
Wow. I feel like that is, first off, putting it on your hand makes it so easy for everyone to remember and actionable in their brain when experience this kind of situation. And two, the steps are they're small like sentences, but they're also big sentences.
Yeah.
Like about the outcome and the outlook. Yeah, it's really, you framed it all so beautifully where you're asking yourself these kind of simple questions like, what is the resistance? But then you're like, what is the resistance?
Right.
What is
There's
it?
layers.
And it kind of peels away at one another. I really love that, Joseph. Thank you so much for sharing.
Oh, you're so welcome. Really, if there's anything that I can leave this world with, right? It's we're moving away from human connection, authentic human connection, because we all have our own little worlds that we're locked in on. And these are exacerbating that little world, right? And that's a whole platform that we can get into. But the reality is they're not going anywhere anytime soon. So because the human connection doesn't feel intuitive anymore, now we have to reintroduce a skill that could foster authentic human connection. And in my opinion, that skill is empathy.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. Yeah, not going into all of the like phones and the way the world is changing, but it's true. Like we need to find that connection again because we're so far from it. We're so removed from having that connection with one another, whether it be in friends or in smaller groups or larger communities. Like that connection is slowly being pulled away, and it's almost like we're losing like a sense of our humanity. It's, I think, one of the things you were saying earlier in the conversation too, where it's like this pivotal pillar in humanity is being pulled away from underneath us, and we need to find the skills to build it back up and have that pillar again, because that will help make, I think, ourselves feel better, but also the world feel a little bit better.
And well, Joseph, this has really been a powerful conversation. I feel I've kind of already like rethought so much about what it means to have those conversations, and like thinking about sympathy and empathy in a new light. That's just such a beautiful takeaway. Before we wrap up, where do you think people can find you if they want to connect with you and your work?
I appreciate that. My work has 3 different prongs. So I'm a professional speaker. So I deliver keynotes. So if there are companies out there, organizations that are looking for a keynote speaker, I love owning the stage and sharing this message to a large group of people. Also I'm a workshop facilitator as well. And so I facilitate anywhere between 3 to 6 hour empathy workshops. So we do some role playing and we figure out some of our own core values, and we do a blueprint of where do some of our life algorithms come from. So we do a deep dive into who we are, create the space so that we can create for others. And then when there's people who are interested in that side of what does it look like to work with somebody on who I am, that's where being an empathy coach comes in, is working from that level of an empathy coach. So to get in touch with me, if there's more that you're interested about, my website is empathyguy.com. Empathyguy.com. It's easy, right? I'm not the empathy guy. There's another guy out there who's the empathy guy, but I'm empathyguy.com. I would like to say that I've got a corner on the market, and then the other thing is the best way, the social media platform that I'm most active on is LinkedIn. So if you look me on, if you just type in Joseph the Empathy Guy or Joseph Empathy Guy, I'll come up. I'll pop up.
That's just so perfect. Courtney, was there anything you wanted to ask before going?
I think that's all. Thank you so much for sharing everything with us, Joseph, and we look forward to connecting a lot more in the future.
I can't wait. I'm not gonna lie. This conversation that we have had today may have been, even though this wasn't an official podcast, may have been one of the most bucket filling recorded conversations that I've had in like recent memory. So thank you for creating the space for me.
Thank
you
you
so
so much
much.
for like giving us all your nuggets of wisdom. Like I'm taking a lot away today. Please keep sharing your stories and making space. And yeah, hopefully we can catch each other next time.
Yeah. Thanks, guys.
Okay,
Thank
I'm gonna
you.
stop the recording.